Greetings and salutations. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to today's upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you may know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter and are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? This is like the third, maybe fourth time I have tried to record an intro for today's upload. And it is because of the experience that I heard. It is such a interesting yet chilling experience, and it happened in an area that I am fascinated with, that I believe that it needs to be heard. Obviously, if you've been with the channel, you know a little bit about me. I live in upstate New York in the Adirondacks, and I've been researching and studying these cryptids, paranormal, for a good chunk of time. I believe there is a 5-state hotspot, Dogman hotspot on the East Coast. I research animal attacks. Dr. Nancy Shaw, Brenda Hamilton, Tony Aarons, Amber Miller, Christopher Whiteley, many others that are not animals, but we are told they are. I also am fascinated and believe that there is something very sinister happening in the state of New Mexico. In the lower part, the most southern part of Colorado, I believe there is a deep underground city that is controlled by the government and the alien agenda, for a lack of a better word. The experience that was shared with me right after and during, I was sitting here thinking about how are these people still doing what they do for a living, but still how lucky they are to still be alive, I guess would be the best thing. So this experience occurred in New Mexico, and many of you, if you don't know, I believe that this New Mexico, for some reason, Roswell, people are like, Roswell, yeah, Roswell. Crazy things, though, is that all of these alien and UFO sightings are in New Mexico, but where did the U.S. government conduct atomic experiments? New Mexico. I myself believe that during those 1940s and 50s treaties, possibly even late 30s, with the agenda, the alien agenda, that our government was granted access to certain technologies, and they were given the ability to abduct and experiment on United States citizens. And that is the lower 48 and Alaska. So there is something very powerful that is in New Mexico. You've got Taos that's got this vibrating hum that people equate to an underground digger, like some sort of underground boring machine. Dulce, it's just so many interesting yet very thought-provoking spots. White Sands. Now, this experience that I'm going to share with you right now occurred in 2016. And it was a husband and wife. They are botanists. Seth and April. They were working and do periodically work for other states. They are not in New Mexico anymore. They were working with the New Mexico Bureau of Land Management at the time. All right. They're botanists. So what they were doing is they were studying the return and gradual growth of different kinds of flora throughout state and federal parks in New Mexico. One of the main reasons is because of what I just stated, the nuclear or atomic testings. There was a lot of wildlife and a lot of flora. So fauna and flora suffered dearly. And now, obviously, we as citizens can care about all of that. We don't want to see total ecosystems wiped out. So this is what these folks are doing. And they are driving around in their vehicle. They are literally living out of their vehicle. They are working out of their vehicle. They are documenting everything out of their vehicle, driving from state and federal park. 2016, they are now on or in an area called Oliver Lee Memorial State Park. And they are heading to an area called Sevieta Wildlife Refuge. And it is a very desolate area to get there. Route 54, and this is going on what Seth and April shared with me. Route 54, there are just a huge distance between these little towns. Very, very beautiful landscape, but very, very boring, Seth said. There was so little to see, but so much to captivate your eye too, if that makes any sense. So they leave Oliver Lee Memorial State Park roughly early afternoon, and they're heading towards the Sevieta Wildlife Refuge. They plan on being there around dusk. They're on Route 54. And as they are driving, April has a map on her legs. She's looking at this map and she looks at Seth and says, "Hey, did you know about this area just outside of Oscaro? That there is a large swath of land, green land. They are in like desert, but just off to the side of us is this just rolling kind of green, desolate island of green, and he's like, no. And they pull over And he Googles the area and he sees, sure enough, there is just this island of green in the middle of this desert. So immediately they come up with the idea, well, let's check this out. Let's see what's in this area. It's just outside of White Sands. As they're leaving Oliver Lee Memorial, they've got to pass the Holman Air Force Base. So let's check it out. This is very interesting. So they're driving, and he already kind of maps everything out. And they both look at Google Maps and really get a good perspective of what and where they need to go, and quite possibly what they may see. Strangely enough, on the other side of this kind of island of green in the middle of nowhere is another Army airfield airport called Oscaro AAF Auxiliary Airport. And they kind of notice that as they are figuring out their drive in. Now, here's where it gets a little hairy for them. They are state employees. They do have credentials. They have certain clearance to do certain things. But they are unsure and unaware of what they are about to do and what they are getting themselves into. And they don't know if they've got the clearance to do this, but they do it anyway because it's always better to beg for forgiveness than ask permission. So they get to Oscaro, which is a good chunk away from where they had been. Now they are living out of their vehicle. They have a 2014, at the time they had a 2014 2-year-old FJ Cruiser. It's a Toyota SUV. It is the kind of nod to the old Toyota Land Cruiser. They're very durable vehicle, especially for what they're doing. Probably not great on gas, but you're going into state parks, you're going off the grid, and you're going to need something that you're not going to get stuck in. But also, it's large enough to where they can store all of their equipment. They have like a tent for sleeping in, and they have another kind of screened tent where they work and eat out of. And what they do is they set their 2 tents by their vehicle and make this little makeshift campsite that's home for them. Home is on the road for these guys. They have like a folding table. They have everything that they need to do their job. This is not new for them. They had been doing this for quite some time, documenting and researching the reemergence of flora. They get to Oscaro and they turn onto a road which they didn't realize was they didn't realize the name of the road until they are about an hour into their journey on this road, and they turned onto WSMRP Route 12. He's got it all documented. He's literally just documented this whole trip, which WSMR means White Sands Missile Range. As they are driving down this, April looks up because she had remembered seeing it on the in her maps and on the computer. So she says, oh my God, this means White Sands missile range. Do you think we're okay? And he says, yeah, we're fine. I don't believe that the radiation levels, and it's true, the radiation levels in that area now have gone down. And there are areas in our country and throughout the world that has more radiation detected than this area. But it's still detectable, that nothing had occurred on. Not White Sands, a ton of experiments and testing happened there, but there are other places throughout the world and country that nothing happened there, but the radiation's a little high. It's our planet, And he explains that to his wife, but they are stoked about getting to this area because, like I keep saying, it is this island of green in the middle of a desert. And they continue to go through on the White Sands Missile Range Road, Route 12. They stop when they start to see a change in scenery. And it is so quick. Like you're driving and there's desert in front of you and on the side of you, and then boom, 1 minute it's like right in your face. Green. So they get to it and they stop. They've been driving for a good clip of time now. They get out of their vehicle and stretch and stuff, and they try to figure something out. Where are we going to park? Let's go a little more down the road and cut through, and we'll loop it back around. Now, just on the other side of this is an area called Oscaro. Oscaro AAF Auxiliary Airport. AAF, Army Airfield Airport. Army Airfield Auxiliary Airport. And more WSMR routes. So like they're on 12. There's 8, 312, and a couple of other ones. All spread out through this area. And he and his wife make the decision of, all right, let's not go further west on these roads. What we'll do is we will go back into and start, we'll set up camp, and then we'll start to record. We'll hike around a little bit, and we'll start to just document and record different flora and different other things that they find, because that's their job. Now, where they are is about midway from Oliver Lee to Sevieta. And they pull out a file. They set up their camp, and they pull out a file, and they proceed to just walk around a little bit around the camp and on the other side of the road that cuts through it, just to see if there's any kind of different types of plants that they have not seen elsewhere in New Mexico. But more importantly is to test the soil where this green island of, no better term. It literally is a living green island in the middle of a desert. Let's test the soil. Why is everything growing here so much better than over here or over here? Even in state parks, there's an issue of growth. So they start to explore and document. They go back to camp, and they decide that, hey, why don't we just stay here for a day. We'll hike around and see. We can, gather up some soil samples and this and that. But next day, we'll head up to Seven Yeta Wildlife. This isn't any big deal, and it's our job. That's literally how Seth is explaining it to April, because April is a little sketch, especially since she found out what the name of the road meant that they were on. They go back to camp and have dinner. April says to Seth, let's take a trip. Let's check out some of those abandoned areas that are on Google Maps on the opposite side of where we are. And Seth at that point is like, well, he's like, I looked into a little bit of this and everything is abandoned. And strangely enough, everything is desolate and barren on the opposite side of this beautiful, lush kind of piece of land that they are standing on. And she kind of pushes it. Let's do it. It'll be fun. This, and that. What, all husbands and boyfriends, I'm assuming, because, I just remember my wife says, let's do it, I guess. I don't want to get yelled at. Just how it is, Happy wife, happy life. So they proceed to drive in and look around, and it is friggin' eerie. He said that it was just so strange. And April immediately, as they are driving to this Oscaro airport, they can see it. She just apologizes and says, let's not go any further. Let's not investigate. Let's, because if we're going that way, and let's say there are military, police, or any kind of law enforcement, and we get stopped, and we are in a location where we're not supposed to be, let's just, at least we're where the flora is, and we can show them our soil samples, this and that, and that we're not doing anything wrong. So they drive back. He parks their vehicle aside of their two tents. They go into their little screened in kind of tent porch and start to document some things that they saw, start talking or listing different soil samples, like soil samples on each side of the road, yada yada. Just their job. And they have dinner prior to going out there. They then decide, all right, let's have a little fire. And since we're going to be here another night, we're going to camp here again. Let's have a drink. Let's have a couple drinks by the fire. Because they hadn't been able to do that where they just were. And they are in a secluded private area. So they do. They have a nice little fire, and they're taking some shots off the, little bottle. And they decide that it's time to crash out and go to bed. They retire to their tent, and young married couple, intoxicated, in the middle of nowhere with nobody around. They consummate the area that they're at. And as they are engaging, they hear this just shrilled kind of shriek. They immediately, they hear it, and stop. And they stop and listen. And they're talking amongst themselves very, quietly. And he says, that very similar to a fox or, maybe a fish or something along that line. He's, trying to think of what this sounded like, because it didn't sound like anything they were familiar with that would be native to this area. And he's like, there's something off about this sound. And April picks up on, it sounds like there is a vocal range or a communication. She said, listen, when it makes that shriek, or that, whatever you want to call it, she said it sounds like there's something after it. No longer than she says that, boom, another shriek. And they both hear what she was talking about, this kind of communication, this little chatter, almost like clucks or whatever you want to call them, chirps, and just little. And they're now their attention is got. If it wasn't got then, it's got now, because Seth immediately says, huh. He says, almost like the chirps and whatever sounds are being made, he compared to almost like a Morse code, or how certain isolated African tribesmen will make noises with their mouths, and that is their language. Instead of having syllables and this and that, there are like chirps and whatever. And I'm not being disrespectful in any manner. I'm just trying to come up with the proper word for it. But just like he said, it was more like this chirping, kind of strange chitter chatter, like just very strange. She looks at him. April looks at Seth and says, I think you're right. She said, there's communication going on. What the hell do you think is going on? Seth is like, shit, my firearm is in the cruiser. Their tent is not right up against their vehicle, but he's got to, if he wanted to get it very quickly, he'd have to open the tent, get out of the tent, and walk around the tent to get to the truck door. And he said, whatever that is, it seems like it's getting closer to us, because they could keep hearing those sounds. Now not attached to a shriek. So he makes a decision, says, listen, whatever happens, just stay in here. If you feel more comfortable zipping the tent up, do it. He said, I'll be right back, like he's going to get his gun. As he gets out of the tent, he leaves the tent flap open a little bit and walks around the tent and sees that there's the doors, front and back door of the vehicle. What he's got to do is open it, and underneath his seat is a kind of travel lockbox for a pistol or pistols. And right beyond that is his Mossberg shotgun. Both are locked. Once again, these are state agents, so they are pretty much straight and narrow. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to jeopardize anything that they're doing. They're doing something that they love and getting paid pretty handsomely for what they're doing. So He gets out and he sees the door and he hears that chitter, that noise. Instantly he turns his head. He's got a flashlight in his hand, and as he turns his head, he sees this kind of palish white kind of disappear off the side of the road into the wilderness across from where they are. So whatever was right there was in the road investigating, what was going on. He turns his head back to get the firearms, opens the door, pulls out his shotgun, grabs the case with the pistols in it. Ammunition is stored in his case where his shotguns are, or his shotgun is. Pistols, grabs it, goes back. As he shuts the door, he gets this chill. He gets this just very, something is wrong. And he says his wife's name, and she says, "I'm here, I'm good, just get back in here." As she says that, there is that chitter chatter off to the side. And mind you, he's already backed up out of the area to get his firearms. It's right in front of him. He hears this chitter, but there's nothing in front of him except his vehicle. And he backs up and he puts his light under the vehicle because he realizes something may be under it. And he had a weird feeling as he was approaching the vehicle and opening the doors to his vehicle to get it out. He almost anticipated something pulling him under the truck. He backs up and he sees it. He sees what he can only describe as this just pale, grotesque kind of creature. He's got his light shined on it. It's not doing anything to cover, its facial features. It's just almost like these eyes are just this shiny, oil-colored eyes. There is no kind of light coming from them, like with a Dogman or with a Bigfoot. People have seen yellow or red or whatever. This is not producing any kind of light. He backs up very quickly, goes into his tent and zips it up and says, "There's something over to the side of us and there's something right under my truck." And he's unlocking his pistol box. He puts a magazine in the pistol, hands it to his wife, puts another in his pistol, and then quickly undoes the shotgun and racks around. Preloaded for you. And he pushes his wife. He says, "Get off the side. Or if you're going to be on the side, the back side, where my truck is, or where the truck is, have it be by, the door there." So he's like, "All right, just sit next to the tire or sit next to me. And be prepared that if you feel any kind of movement, there is nobody out here with us. Whatever the hell this thing is, or these things are, just fire away. Don't worry about the tent. Don't worry about our ears. Just because whatever I saw and whatever was under there does not look like it is just playing with us." So they are positioned in their tent. She's next to him. Their backs are to the door of the tent or the tent flap because of the fact that one was in or underneath their vehicle and one on that side. Both know how to use firearms. Seth deemed it necessary to before even taking on jobs like this, and traveling throughout states and national parks and stuff, that he had brought April to a gun range and some minimal training, so she's not a expert shot, but she's not a beginner. They're just trying to figure out what they're going to do at this point. And they both hear this very quick kind of scurry they can almost feel the movement outside of their tent. And it was in front of that flap. All seconds later, as they hear something run past the front part of the tent, he believes it was the one that was underneath the vehicle, very quickly hits the tent on the corner side of the tent where the poles would be, and immediately hits it very hard, like just kind of crashes into it. The tent, outside of the tent, moves in, as you can see a silhouette of a body. During that, he hears, because he's right there, she's in tears right now. He hears the kind of cracking of their fiberglass tent poles, the kind that you put together, and it snaps, but there's still 6 anchor points of this tent, so it's not collapsed the tent. As that happens, he's got kind of like a full range of this creature in its body position, and he, not thinking, shoots, not thinking of where their vehicle is positioned. And he does 2 quick shots, and he doesn't hear any kind of thwack or some sort of sickening sound of that round hitting some sort of living entity, human, animal, whatever, but he hears a ting, clearly a metal ting, and he stops. He thinks to himself, I was sitting there and I thought to myself that, oh shit, I just possibly stranded us here because of that sound. He's thinking, oh my God, maybe I hit a tire or whatnot. April is, the second he shoots his 2 shots, she shoots a couple of rounds out towards nothing. There's nothing out there. She just did it instinctively. He puts his hand on her shoulder. She jumps because she's terrified, and they stop to listen. Right now there are 2 holes where he's looking, and whatever amount of holes were in the front part of the tent. They don't hear anything. They do not hear any kind of movement. They don't hear any kind of chitter or screech. They hear nothing. Dead silent. And he talks amongst themselves, and he says, I think we'd be safer in the truck. I'm going to open the flap, and I'm going to peek out. And if there's nothing around, we're gonna run to the truck. We'll get in it and we'll go. We'll quickly take off. He looks out and there's nothing. There's nothing. There's no any kind of movement, no sound. It's just eerily silent. And they are off of the SMR dirt road area. So they're in this green kind of lush area. So you really can't see too much. There's no light pollution whatsoever. There's stars, but they are not very bright. And he's trying to figure out if they are safe. As he starts to talk to his wife, he's got his head right here looking to her saying, I think we're good. You go first. I will make sure that nothing gets you from behind you or on the side of you. But let's get you in the vehicle and we'll figure everything out from there. If you have to, jump in the back while I jump in the front, and we'll shut the doors and we'll figure it out. If we got to take off, leave shit here, whatever. Their other tent has all of their documentation and their soil samples and everything. Just as he's about to tell her to jump out, he hears this god-awful sound of, it's very similar to the first shrieks they were hearing, but this was something along that line, but immediately he could understand that it was a cry of pain along with that loud shrieking sound. And as that noise is made, he turns to look and he sees, he cannot physically see because of the darkness, but what he can see is the embers of that fire that they had earlier. It was circular kind of fire pit, stones and whatever. They don't know what they're dealing with yet, but as it was running through or around their camp, possibly to get around their tent, it hit that fire pit and kind of an explosion of just little embers of heat flicker out. As he sees and he quickly shoots his pistol in that area, directly at where seconds ago you saw this kind of poof of ember. Shoots, and it lights up the area just a split second. And he can see, it's almost like their tent is here, and he can see a position, almost like a line of these creatures watching the tent, waiting for them to come out of that tent. He zips his tent up very quickly, and she's in tears. She did not just see what he saw. And he says, I don't think we're going to be able to get out of here. But what we're going to do is we're just going to stay kind of in the center of the tent, and whatever comes, we shoot. Whatever is, if they try to hit the tent and knock it down, shoot where it is. If worse comes to worse and the tent gets knocked down on us, just fire at will when you know something is next to you or on you or near you. The only logical thing that they can do to protect themselves. They're coming up with this, and just out of earshot, he hears something. And he puts his hand on his wife's, like puts his finger up to her mouth, and it's like this kind of clapping thunder sound. And he puts it together because as it's coming, he realizes that's a helicopter. That's a helicopter. All right. Maybe it'll, scare whatever is out there away. And he hears it go kind of off just north of where they are. It goes just past where they are. They can see some sort of light from this helicopter shining through the tent, the canvas of the tent. And he immediately opens that flap, and he has his flashlight. He lights the flashlight up and looks. And you see they are what we know as crawlers, all in this line still. And he said how they were positioned was, have you ever seen a large, how a very large but skinny dog sits? Their paws together, kind of resting on their haunches and just staring, not like, almost like a Doberman pinscher would. Very skinny, but muscular, with that kind of work, keep attack mode, just right on him. Instantly he's like, fuck, man, these things, and he's like, they look like dogs, but they're not a dog. How they are sitting resembled the canine. They hear the rounding of that helicopter, and you can see off in the distance the light, a spotlight, and he holds his flashlight up and he turns it on and off for Morse code, or the international SOS. And you hear the helicopter come back very quickly around. The spotlight is projected down. It hits their tent, and they are immediately blinded. It can't see anything because it's so bright. They cover their eyes, and he said, Jeff, I thought we were a goner at that point because I couldn't see. He goes, April, if I can't see, she can't see. And I thought that's when these things were going to come and attack us. He said, the next thing I hear is a very quick and low kind of flyover. It shakes the tent, the wind and the vibration of everything. He turns to look, but once again, his eyes got those balls of light in them. And eventually his eyes clear up very quickly, not eventually, like 10 minutes, but seconds go by, and he's got his flashlight still on, looking, and he sees them scatter. And he said how they ran was just like how you would expect a pack of coyote to run. Just gone. Not in formation and not in any kind of pattern, but just running away from that light on that helicopter. It flies over and goes back the way it had come, which would have been in the area of the Oscaro airport area. He does not know where it came from. It just came from that area. He says, now or never, we gotta get to the vehicle. Let's just get in it and we'll figure it out from there. They get out quickly, and he's got his shotgun under his shoulder. He gets hurt in the vehicle. He gets in the vehicle, and they shut the door and lock it. A few seconds later, maybe 30 seconds later, they're being quiet. She's in the back seat, kind of huddled down. And he's looking out the window, kind of trying to figure out where that helicopter is, who that helicopter is, and what they're going to do. All of a sudden, it flies back again over them and kind of goes around almost in another kind of circular pattern and shoots back the opposite way. Again, he's looking, he can't see any of these creatures. They are wherever, hiding amongst the trees, amongst the, flora. Just, they are not there. He goes to start the truck and realizes, oh my God, my keys are in the top of my lockbox. With all the commotion, once he opened his pistol lockbox, he had left the keys sitting in it, which is in the tent. 10-15 minutes go by. They've come to that thought of, we're going to have to wait until daybreak. Maybe these things won't be out in a day, because they didn't see anything. There was a little bit of eeriness, but nothing to suggest that something like this was in the area as they were doing their kind of research. He sees one hit go into the tent. He sees it running, and it ran very similar, once again, to a dog. Mind you, this is not a dog. It is what we call crawlers on this channel. Those very strange, very thin creatures, almost a nondescript face. He sees it, he watches it run into the tent, and he can see the movement on the tent, like it is ripping apart the tent. And he honks his horn. The only thing he can do. What is he? He's not going to shoot through his truck. As he does this, two of these creatures jump onto the hood of his truck. Now, for that to happen, that would be on 6 foot. That would be the hood of a FJ Cruiser would probably be to my chin, maybe my nose. They're raised up good distance right from, the factory. They're a SUV meant to do, go into the wilds. Not just, rural. Just drive, they are a vehicle with a purpose. And that purpose is to go into state parks and this and that. So they jumped up, boom. 5.5 foot jump from wherever. And he's staring at them. He's in the front seat. His wife is still huddled in the back. He's like, just stay in the back and huddle down and try not to look out the window. Whatever you do, we're going to be okay. We'll get through this. She doesn't see what is on the hood of the truck looking in at him, but she's laying and she said, holy shit, there's a bullet hole in the door. And she said, if I was sitting, it would have literally, if they had been in that vehicle or she had been in the vehicle and he had shot, it would have hit her. But no way it was gonna, they were both in the tent, but it was still the fact of where that bullet placement was. Fluke, 1 in a million shot, and it would have done the purpose of it not, it would have. These things are on the hood staring at him. He's getting a bird's eye view, this very nondescript face, these very large mouths. He said the mouth, so if you put your finger to your ear and you draw towards underneath your nose, so from where your ear is on both sides, he said that's how big these things' mouths were. He said it was almost like it was all mouth. He said, and there was just this like $50 sized black coloring for where their eyes were. There was somewhat of a nose, but not anything, very similar to a pig's nose, but much smaller. Like that, not the snout, but the nose part of the pig. And he's just, holy shit, what are these things? And they are sitting once again in that position, that attack position. About a half hour, 40 minutes have gone by, and he notices light. And he looks in his rear view, because where he's parked, he's still on WSMR. And he looks in the rear view and he sees 2 sets of headlights coming up behind him from the direction that helicopter had gone. And he's like, I think we got company. I think we're going to be okay. Yada, yada, yada. What pulls up? Blacked out kind of SUV, suburban SUV kind of thing. And behind that is some sort of truck with a bed, just a truck. Nothing, blacked out as well. Pulls right aside of their vehicle and tips its nose inward to if these guys knew they had their keys, they could have, but they don't have their keys, so they're not going anywhere. Immediately from the back door of that Suburban, 2 men jump out. Both men are heavily armed, Army issued rifle, M14s. No, M4s? M4s. I believe they're M4s. He doesn't know what they are. He said M16, but M4s. Jumps out with their rifles and taps on the window. He's looking at them. These 2 creatures are long gone. He turns to look, and they're putting window down. Put your window down. And he goes, I can't. I don't have the keys. He says, get out, sir. Get out. And he says something to April. And these guys are on edge. They are, because when she pops up, they put their barrel on her. Right dead ass aimed for her. They make eye contact and realize, okay, guns are down. They get her out of the vehicle, him out of the vehicle. They put them both in the Suburban. And they both vehicles quickly kind of do a U-ey in the road, in this very narrow dirt road, and head towards where the helicopter had just come and where these vehicles had just come, back towards the Oscara AAF airport. And they're driving. He's listening to what they're saying. He's trying to figure out what's going on. because they are both, Seth and April are sitting side by side with one armed man here and another armed man here, a passenger, a driver, and they're both just, there's kind of a radio contact, whether it be with the truck behind them or wherever they're going. But there's a question asked. He doesn't think much of it until they make the statement. They also took Seth's pistol. April had left hers in their FJ Cruiser. One of the guys, probably the passenger, he couldn't really tell who it was. He believes the passenger asked, "Did you shoot any of them? If so, how many?" He said, I shot at them, but I do not believe that any of them are, dead. He said one of them ran through our fire pit and got, hurt pretty badly. But other than that, we were just taking shots trying to survive. As they're now, once that information is fed to these guys, one of the guys gets onto the radio and says, "No casualties on team," and there was a number that he does not remember a number, but team whatever. As they're driving, he realizes that there are no casualties on team, we'll say 26, but that was not the number that was used. And he puts two and two together that they're not talking about themselves. They're talking about whatever those things are. And they are a team of, what are these things? Nightmare fuel? They're driving, they're in their vehicle probably 30 minutes now. And she's looking through the window. And he realizes that just off in the distance, he can kind of see what looks like light. Not a lot of light, but what appears to be, there's some sort of facility or something's got some sort of light on it. And as he says, "Hey, where are we going and where are you taking us? We work for New Mexico Bureau of Land Management. We have, kind of permission to be out here. We're researching, plant life and the reintroduction and revitalization of these plants coming back. Where are we going?" And nothing. It's like dead silent. And all of a sudden, both at almost simultaneously, they are both hooded. A hood is put over both of their heads. And he hears his wife kind of make that little sigh of defeat and fear. And he kind of yells out, "Don't you fucking touch her." She says to him that she's okay. "I just can't see I'm okay." Even though she's in absolute terror, she still comforted him. They get to somewhere because all they could see is a couple of little lights in the distance. Once again, not a city, not any kind of whatever, just noticeable because it's so dark. They get out of their vehicle. They hear what sounds like commotion, some sort of machinery, elevator, possibly whatever. They're escorted out of the vehicle, led to an area, and he smells what he smells, or he only puts towards like a garage, a mechanic shop. That grease, that just oil, the old kind of smell that not a newer like mechanic shop would have, but you know, your mechanic shop that's in a very small town run by a generational, you know, every town has one. But that smell, and it's, to him, he said it was very comforting to smell because it wasn't what I expected. They're led to a room. Hoods are taken off immediately. They've been sat down, and there's a table that they're sitting at. And when the hoods are taken off, obviously they quickly open their eyes. And on the wall is these just very bright lights. There's lights on the ceiling, lights on that wall. Later, after he realizes that there's lights behind him as well, and they are being addressed by someone that they cannot see. There's someone sitting in front of them. They can make out that there is someone in front of them, but they cannot see any kind of facial identity. He can see what he believes to be military badges of whatever, valor, whatever, you know what I mean, guys. That clearly this is someone in the military. They are told, you know, they are questioned, told, you know, what were you out, asked why were you out there, where are your credentials, who are you, this and that. And as they are getting interrogated or spoken to, it's almost like these people know exactly who they are, because the guy lets it slip a couple of times, like something said that he hadn't said, you know. More or less, are you planning on going back to, you know, your home when you're done with your job for the New Mexico Bureau of Land Management? Just shit like that, you know. And then they are kind of left in this room, and the lights on the walls go off. The lights above are dimmed, and there's that buzz, that schoolroom light buzz, that, and him and April are talking like, do you think we're in trouble? Are we gonna get arrested for being in an unauthorized area? And she's a little upset because, you know, even though it was her idea after they had found their spot to drive a little ways out, but you know, if we didn't pull in here, she's just scared, very scared, as well as he is too. And a door opens behind them. There's a tray of some food in front of them. They eat, and then the lights kick back on. They're asked if they need to use the restroom. She does. He doesn't. She's hooded and taken out of the room. He immediately starts freaking out, because he's like, I know you took, but why aren't you taking me? You know. Couple minutes go by. She's brought back. Did anything happen? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I just used the bathroom. You know, nobody said anything to me. What did you see? I had my hood on. I was led. I took my hood off in the bathroom, and it looked like kind of a regular, almost like a doctor's office. It was very clean looking, very sterile looking. And it didn't smell like the first smells that we got when we first entered this building. They're told that what they saw this evening was a pack of coyote that is sick, that has mange, quite possibly rabid, and they are essentially tracking and taking this pack of rabid coyote out. He's not dumb enough to where he says those aren't coyote. He just shuts up and agrees. So we're at an understanding, right, guys, that it was coyote. Yes. They're led back to their vehicle, released, brought back to their vehicle. It is daytime now. It is hot. So his watch stopped working during this period of time. So he doesn't know what time it is. All he knows is it's hot. It's very hot, humid, muggy. So they are told to, clean up your mess, get your shit, and get out of here. Zooms back around and goes. About an hour of them cleaning up, picking up in terror. They get all their stuff. None of their stuff had been taken or touched, destroyed, any of their documentation or whatever. Their tent clearly in shambles. Their key still in. So when they were taken, whoever, we know who took them. He knows obviously who took them, the government. But no one came back and did anything to their stuff. They already knew who they were somehow. They put all of their stuff, packed up their stuff. Their firearms were still, there, and they had, he got his pistol back. And they proceeded to, let's get out of here and let's go to Savita, to the refuge and finish our job. We won't talk about this. Let's just get out of here. As he's pulling out, he makes the decision to turn around and drive back towards where they had gone that night. She's apprehensive about it, but he's like, I need to see where we were. He goes, because none of this made any sense. He's like, and they get to the point where he believes he was at the area where he had seen those lights. So, a couple more minutes of driving, they should be wherever they were taken. And they kind of drive through. They don't stop. They find there's another crossroad, which would be another White Sands missile range. And the only building they see is what looks like an old kind of military air hangar. And he just kind of looks and says, and they drive out. And to this day, what he saw makes no sense of how the building was set that they were in. And he now knows or believes without a shadow of a doubt that there is a underground facility. Maybe a small base, maybe a big base, but underneath the Oscaro Army airport. The other thing that he's dealing with, and he's thought about, is that team that was mentioned, team numbered, was clearly not the people that picked them up. So were these things some sort of genetic soldier, where they, like, I believe the agenda in their deep underground facilities created crawlers. Because if you think about in history, people have talked about how ghouls in Europe and other areas resemble crawlers. No, they do and they don't. You know, those creatures had huge ears, these pointed ears. And what people describe as crawlers lately is they don't have ears. It's just this very nondescript head. Or those genetically created soldiers. And were they sent as some sort of training mission to hunt him and his wife down for being in a wrong area? And he's like, to this day, I have no idea, but I still get nightmares periodically thinking, they had to execute my wife, or, and for some reason, that's what he thinks about. And he loves her. He's got to protect her, in his head. But he said that area of New Mexico where it is literally sits in between a couple of points, and it makes sense. I don't believe that those bases that are below a certain point, probably below what would it be, Los Alamos? Yeah. Below that would be deep underground bases. The city is north in southern Colorado. Are those creatures designed to protect those areas? Quite possibly, yes. Quite possibly, yes. Just a freaking terrifying experience. Just imagine if, imagine if he didn't have the common sense to, when he shot, to look to see what was out there, that light flash. And that's when he realized, holy shit, there's about 12 of these things just sitting Indian style, like a Doberman pincher kind of, very, not Indian style, but, watching us. Would they have taken us out? Who knows? But those things are definitely, I believe, 100% created by the alien agenda. And if you think about Robert and his dad, Junior and his dad, Robert, when JR saw those creatures come and hunt that Dogman and bring it into that little cave opening that almost appeared too big for them to get through. So how did it get the Dogman through? Very easily, rip it, pull it in. And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.